The child's cry cut through the winter evening like something alive and wounded. It wasn't loud at first. It trembled, thin, desperate, lost beneath traffic noise and the hiss of street vendors packing up their carts. But something in that sound made Hannah stop mid-step, her gloved hand tightening around the paper bag of leftover bread she hadn't sold. She turned. The alley beside the convenience store was narrow and dim, lit by a flickering bulb that buzzed like an insect on its last breath. At the far end, half hidden behind a stack of crates, a small boy sat on the cold pavement. His knees were pulled to his chest. His cheeks were red from crying and cold. His hands shook as he rubbed his eyes, smearing tears across his face. He couldn't have been more than 5. Hannah glanced up and down the street first. Old habit. Caution came before compassion when you lived the way she did. Soul at night could be kind, but it could also be sharp. She didn't see anyone nearby. No frantic parent. No angry adult shouting her name. Just the boy. Her breath fogged in the air as she stepped closer. "Hey," she said softly, lowering herself into a crouch a few feet away. "Are you lost?" The child didn't answer. His crying hiccuped, grew louder, then broke into quiet sobs that seemed to fold him in on himself. Hannah felt something twist painfully in her chest. She knew that sound. It was the sound she used to make when she was little, when hunger woke her before dawn and there was nothing in the apartment except water and silence. She slowly set the paper bag down between them and opened it. The warm scent of bread drifted out. Sweet red bean buns, still soft from the afternoon batch. She broke one in half and held it out. "Hey," she murmured. "You must be cold." The boy's crying stuttered to a stop. He looked at the bread, then at her. His eyes were large and dark, rimmed with red. Suspicion flickered there. Sharp, learned too early. Then hunger won. He reached out with both hands and took the bun. "Slowly," Hannah said, smiling despite herself. "It's warm." He nodded, stuffing too much into his mouth anyway. Crumbs fell onto his coat. He chewed with single-minded focus, like the world had narrowed to this one moment. Hannah sat back on her heels, letting out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. "What's your name?" she asked gently. The boy swallowed. "Minutjun." "That's a good name," she said. "I'm Hannah." Minutjun nodded, as if filing the information away, then took another bite. His hands had stopped shaking. Hannah glanced at his coat, expensive wool, navy blue, with a stitched emblem on the sleeve. Too nice for a child wandering alone. His shoes were clean. His hair was neatly cut. This wasn't a runaway from the streets. "Do you know where your parents are?" she asked. Minutjun's face crumpled again. "He left," he whispered. "Who left?" Hannah asked, keeping her voice steady. "My driver," he said. "He told me to wait. But it got dark." Something cold slid down her spine. Drivers didn't just leave children. Not ones dressed like this. "How long have you been here?" she asked. The boy shrugged, wiping his nose with his sleeve. "A long time." Hannah checked her phone. The battery icon glowed red. 3%. Typical. She stood and offered him her hand. "Okay," she said. "We're not staying here. Let's go inside where it's warm, all right." Minutjun hesitated, then slipped his small hand into hers. His fingers were icy. Inside the convenience store, fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Hannah guided him to a table near the window and bought a bottle of warm milk with the last of her coins. She watched him drink, the tension slowly draining from his small shoulders. Her mind raced. Call the police. That was the sensible thing. But the thought made her stomach knot. She'd had enough experiences with uniforms to last a lifetime. Enough to know that systems moved slowly and children got scared. Still, she reached for her phone. It died in her hand. She exhaled sharply. "Do you remember any phone numbers?" she asked. Minutjun shook his head. "Appa's phone is locked." Of course it was. "Do you know your address?" Another shake. Hannah leaned back in her chair and stared at the ceiling for a moment, silently cursing the universe. She was tired. Her feet ached. Her rent was late again. She had no business getting involved in something this complicated. But when she looked back at Minutjun, crumbs on his lips, eyes finally calm, she knew she was already involved. "All right," she said. "Here's what we're going to do. We'll wait a little longer. If no one comes, I'll find someone to help us." Minutjun nodded solemnly. like he trusted her completely. That trust scared her more than anything. Outside, the street darkened. The convenience store clerk glanced at them with mild curiosity but said nothing. Hannah's gaze kept drifting to the door, her muscles tightening every time it opened. Then it happened. The air changed. It was subtle at first, a shift in pressure, like the moment before a storm breaks. Conversations outside felt quieter. A car engine idled, low and powerful, not the rattling kind she was used to. Hannah looked up. Through the glass, she saw a black sedan pull to the curb. Then another, and another. The doors opened. Men stepped out. 3, 4, 6 of them. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in dark coats that cost more than her monthly income. Their movements were precise, controlled, not hurried, not panicked, dangerous. Hannah's heart slammed against her ribs. Minute John slid off his chair and ran to the window. Appa! Her breath caught. One man remained by the car. He was taller than the others, his posture perfectly straight, his expression carved from stone. His hair was black and neatly styled, his jaws sharp enough to cut glass. Even from across the street, his presence was overwhelming. He turned his head slightly. The moment his eyes landed on the child, something fractured in his expression. He crossed the street in long strides. The door chimed as he entered the store. Conversation died instantly. The clock froze. The man's gaze went first to Minute John, scanning, assessing, relief flooding through him so quickly it almost hurt to witness. He dropped to one knee and pulled the boy into his arms. Minute John clung to him, burying his face in the man's coat. Appa, you took too long. I'm Hay, the man said, his voice low, steady, threaded with something raw beneath it. I'm Hay. Hannah stood slowly, every instinct screaming at her to stay invisible. The man rose, still holding his son. His eyes lifted. They locked onto her. Dark, sharp, measuring. For a heartbeat, the entire world seemed to narrow to that look. You, he said. It wasn't a question. Hannah swallowed. He was crying, she said quietly. I just gave him food. The man studied her face, as if weighing truths and lies in the slope of her shoulders, the wear in her coat, the exhaustion she hadn't bothered to hide. Did anyone else touch him? He asked. No, she said quickly. Just me. Another pause. Then, slowly, he inclined his head. Not a bow. Not quite gratitude, but acknowledgement. Thank you, he said. Relief washed over her so fast her knees almost gave out. She gathered her bag, already turning away, eager to disappear back into a small, manageable life. Behind her, the man spoke again. Wait. Her hand froze on the door. She turned. He was watching her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. What is your name? He asked. Hannah, she replied. He repeated it once, quietly, as if testing how it sounded in his mouth. Hannah, he said, this isn't over. Her stomach dropped. She had no idea how right he was. Behind her, footsteps approached, and everything she thought she knew about her life began to unravel. Hannah did not sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the man's face again, sharp, unreadable, etched into her thoughts like a warning she didn't yet understand. His voice replayed too, calm and heavy with implication. This isn't over. She told herself she was being dramatic. Rich men said strange things all the time. Powerful men lived in a different world, one she'd brushed against by accident and already stepped away from. That should have been the end of it. Morning came gray and thin, sunlight barely reaching the small basement apartment she rented beneath the dentist's office. The radiator clicked weakly. Hannah lay still, listening to the city wake above her. Footsteps, car horns, a muffled laugh. Normal life. She dressed, tied her hair back, and went to work. The bakery smelled like yeast and sugar, familiar and grounding. Hannah lost herself in routine, measuring flour, kneading dough, setting trays into the oven. Heat bloomed against her skin. For a while, the memory of the child and his father faded into the background hum of the day. Then the bell above the door rang. She looked up. The man from the night before stepped inside. The bakery seemed to shrink around him. He wore a dark wool coat again, tailored to perfection. His presence swallowed the space. Customers instinctively fell quiet. eyes flicking toward him and then away. He stood just inside the doorway, scanning the room until his gaze found her. Hannah's hands stilled in the dough. Her heart began to pound. He walked toward the counter with measured steps, every movement deliberate. Close up. She could see faint lines at the corners of his eyes, signs of strain rather than age. His face was striking but not soft, built for command, not comfort. "You shouldn't be here," she said before she could stop herself. A corner of his mouth twitched. "Good morning to you too." His voice was the same, low, controlled, carrying weight without effort. "What do you want?" she asked, keeping her tone neutral. She wiped her hands on her apron, aware of the flour dusting her sleeves, the simple reality of herself compared to him. "To talk," he said. "Somewhere private." "I'm working." He glanced around the bakery. "I can see that." She lifted her chin. "Then you should leave." For a moment, she thought he might argue. Instead, he reached into his coat and placed a card on the counter. Black. Matte. No logo. Just a name and a number. Kang Junseo. "Call me when you're done," he said. "Please." The word startled her more than anything else. Before she could respond, he turned and left. The bell chimed again. Hannah stared at the card long after he was gone, unease curling tight in her chest. She told herself she wouldn't call. She called anyway. An hour later, a car waited outside the bakery. The same black sedan. Hannah hesitated on the sidewalk, every instinct screaming at her to walk away. But curiosity, dangerous, insistent, pulled her forward. The driver opened the door without a word. Inside, the car smelled faintly of leather and something sharper beneath it. Clean. Controlled. Junseo sat in the back seat, his posture relaxed but alert, like a predator at rest. "Thank you for coming," he said. "I didn't agree to anything," Hannah replied. "No," he said. "You didn't." The car pulled into traffic. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Lunch," he said. She laughed once, sharp and humorless. "You don't invite people like this to lunch." "People like me do," he said calmly. They stopped in front of a restaurant she'd only ever seen in passing. Glass walls, minimalist elegance, a host bowing deeply as they entered. Hannah felt painfully out of place in her worn coat and scuffed boots. They were seated in a private room. Tea was poured. Dishes arrived silently. Hannah barely touched her food. "Why are you here?" she asked again. Junseo studied her for a moment. "Because you fed my son." Her chest tightened. "Anyone would have." "No," he said softly. "They wouldn't." He leaned back slightly. "Minijun doesn't trust easily. He trusted you." "That doesn't mean anything." "It means everything," he replied. Silence stretched between them. "I need you," he said finally. The words landed heavy. "For what?" she asked. "My son," he said. "He hasn't spoken much since his mother died." Hannah's breath caught. "He spoke to you," Junseo continued. "He ate. He waited. He slept through the night afterward for the first time in weeks." Her defenses wavered. "What does that have to do with me?" she whispered. "I want you to spend time with him," he said. "Be familiar. Safe." She stared at him. "You asking me to be a nanny?" "No," he said. "I'm asking you to be yourself." "That's insane," she said, pushing back from the table. "You don't know me." "I know enough," he replied. "You could have taken him. You didn't. You could have walked away. You didn't. You stayed." Her voice shook. "You can't just decide my life for me." "I'm not," he said quietly. "I'm offering. And if I say no?" His gaze sharpened, but his voice remained even. "Then I will respect it." She searched his face for deception, for threat. She found none. "Why me?" she asked. "Because he needs someone real," he said. "And because you need money." Her jaw tightened. He met her anger steadily. "I'm not insulting you. I'm stating facts. You work too hard for too little. Let me help. I don't want your pity." "It isn't pity," he said. "It's necessity." Hannah stood. "I need time." "Take it," he said, "but not too long." As she turned to leave, he spoke again. "There are people who will notice you now," he said. Because you noticed my son. Her blood ran cold. What does that mean? She asked. It means, he said, that whether you accept my offer or not, you're already connected to us. She left the restaurant with her hands shaking. That night, she dreamed of footsteps behind her, of a small hand slipping into haze, of a man watching her from the shadows, not with menace, but with something dangerously close to need. And she knew, with a certainty that settled deep in her bones, this was only the beginning. Hannah accepted the offer 3 days later. Not because she trusted Kang Junseo, not because she believed money could solve grief, but because Minute-jun had looked at her through the glass wall of the penthouse lobby that morning and smiled like she was something solid in a world that kept shifting beneath his feet. That smile undid her. The building itself felt unreal, steel and glass rising into the gray soul sky, guarded by men who scanned every face with quiet vigilance. Hannah had never been anywhere like it. The elevator ascended so smoothly she barely felt it move, her ears popping as numbers climbed higher and higher. When the doors opened, warm light spilled out. The penthouse was spacious but not cold. Soft rugs muted footsteps. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the river, sunlight reflecting off water like scattered coins. The air smelled faintly of cedar and clean linen. Minute-jun came running the moment he saw her. "Hannah!" he cried, colliding with her legs and wrapping his arms around her knees. She laughed, startled, instinctively resting a hand on his head. "Hey, careful." Behind him, Junseo watched. He wore no coat today, just a dark sweater and slacks, his sleeves pushed up slightly, without the armor of formality. He looked younger. Tired, too. The sharpness in his eyes softened when his son clung to her. "You came," Minute-jun said, peering up at her as if she might vanish. "I did," she replied. "Just like I said." He beamed. Junseo cleared his throat. "You can leave your things there," he said, gesturing toward a side room. "You'll have a private suite. You're not required to stay overnight, but you're welcome to." "I'll go home at night," Hannah said quickly. "As you wish," he replied. The days settled into a strange rhythm. Hannah spent mornings with Minute-jun, reading, cooking simple meals together, walking in the private garden terrace where winter sunlight filtered weakly through bare branches. She discovered he loved dinosaurs and hated loud noises. He asked questions in careful bursts, like each one cost him something. At first, Junseo kept his distance. He worked from his office, doors closed, speaking into phones and languages Hannah didn't recognize. When he passed through shared spaces, his presence changed the air. Conversations dimmed, servants moved faster. But he watched. She felt his gaze when she helped Minute-jun with homework, when she laughed at something small, when she scolded gently instead of sharply. His attention was never invasive, but it was constant, like he was learning her the way one learns a map, carefully, thoroughly. One evening, Minute-jun fell asleep early, curled on the couch with his head in Hannah's lap. She didn't move, afraid to wake him. Junseo appeared quietly, a blanket folded over his arm. He paused when he saw them, something unreadable passing over his face. "He hasn't done that in a long time," he said softly. She glanced up. He was tired. "He trusts you," Junseo said. She smiled faintly. "So do children." He shook his head slightly. "Not mine." He draped the blanket over Minute-jun, his movements careful, reverent. For a moment, father and son shared the same breath. Then Junseo straightened. "Have you eaten?" "I'm fine," Hannah said. "You say that often," he replied. She stiffened. "I don't expect." "That wasn't an accusation," he said calmly. "It was an observation." She studied his face, searching for irony or condescension. There was none. "I'll have dinner brought," he said. "You should join me." She hesitated. "Please," he added. The word still surprised her. They ate together at a long table that felt too large for two people. Conversation was halting at first, then gradually eased into something quieter, more human. "Why do you do what you do?" she asked suddenly. He set his chopsticks down. "Power is inherited or taken," he said. "I was not born into mine." "That doesn't answer the question." He met her gaze. "Because if I didn't, someone else would, and they would be worse." She considered that. You sound like someone who tells himself that often. A flicker of something, amusement, maybe, crossed his face. You're perceptive. She shrugged. I grew up fast. So did I, he said. For a moment, something unspoken passed between them. The first threat came quietly. A black car she didn't recognize followed Hannah home one night. It stayed far enough back to be deniable, close enough to be deliberate. When she turned suddenly, it slowed. When she stopped, it idled. Her chest tightened. The next morning, Junseo noticed her distraction immediately. What happened? He asked. She hesitated, then told him. His expression hardened, not with anger, but with precision. I thought this might happen, he said. What does that mean? She asked. It means my enemies test weaknesses, he replied. And you are visible now. Fear coiled in his stomach. I didn't agree to be a target. No, he said firmly, and you won't be. He made a call. Quiet. Efficient. From that day on, someone walked Hannah home. The tension between them sharpened. She resented the protection even as she felt safer with it. He respected her space even as his concern deepened. Small moments accumulated. Shared glances. Quiet laughter. The way his voice softened when he spoke her name. One night, the building lost power. The city outside went dark, the river disappearing into blackness. Emergency lights flickered on, bathing the penthouse in dim amber. Minute-jun cried out from his room. Hannah reached him first, scooping him into her arms as he shook. It's okay, she whispered. I'm here. Junseo appeared moments later, relief flooding his face at the sight of them together. When the lights finally returned, Minute-jun had fallen asleep against Hannah's shoulder. Junseo watched her carry his son to bed with a tenderness that cracked something open in him. Stay, he said quietly when she turned to leave. She hesitated. He's asleep. I didn't mean for him, Junseo said. The air between them felt charged, fragile. She stayed. They sat in the living room, silence heavy but not uncomfortable. You don't belong in my world, he said finally. I know, she replied. And yet, he continued, you've made a place in it. She looked at him then, really looked. The lines of strain, the loneliness he carried like armor. You don't have to do this alone, she said softly. Something in his eyes broke. Before either of them could think better of it, he reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. Their fingers intertwined, warm, grounding. It wasn't a kiss. It was something more dangerous. A promise neither of them was ready to make. And somewhere beyond the glass walls, someone watched the light return to the penthouse and decided it was time to strike. The first shot shattered the glass before Hannah heard the sound. It came from the river-facing side of the penthouse, a sharp crack that split the quiet like bone breaking. The window spiderwebbed outward, fragments spraying across the floor. Hannah screamed and ducked instinctively, pulling Minute-jun down with her. Junseo moved faster than thought. He crossed the room in 3 strides, body between them and the windows, one arm shielding Hannah, the other already reaching for the concealed weapon beneath the side table. His face was no longer controlled calm. It was lethal focus. Stay down, he ordered, voice iron. Another shot rang out. This one hit the wall, burying itself deep. Minute-jun sobbed, clutching Hannah's coat. She wrapped herself around him, heart slamming so hard she thought it might break her ribs. Security alarms wailed. Footsteps thundered from the hallway as guards rushed in, shouting into radios. The penthouse lights dimmed automatically, emergency protocols engaging. Junseo fired once toward the window, not blindly, but with calculated precision. Silence followed. Move, Junseo said to Hannah, already pulling her up. Safe room. Now. They ran. The hidden door slid open at his command, revealing reinforced walls and a steel table bolted to the floor. Junseo ushered them inside, sealing it shut behind them. The room vibrated faintly as more gunfire erupted outside. Hannah pressed Minute-jun's face into her shoulder, murmuring nonsense words just to keep him breathing. Appa, Minute-jun whispered. I'm here, Junseo said immediately, kneeling in front of them. His hands cupped his son's face, checking for injuries. When he found none, his shoulders sagged a fraction, relief cutting deep. I'm not going anywhere. Hannah's hands were shaking. This is because of me, she said hoarsely. Junseo looked at her sharply. No, they followed me, she insisted. You said. I said you were visible, he replied. Not vulnerable. That's my failure, not yours. The words landed heavy. The gunfire stopped. Voices rose outside, controlled, professional. Clean up. Junseo stood, listening through the walls. After a long moment, he exhaled. It's over, he said. For now. They remained in the safe room longer than necessary. Minijun fell asleep curled against Hannah, exhaustion winning over Faye. Junseo watched them, something unguarded in his eyes. I should have sent you away, he said quietly. Hannah looked up. Would you have slept better? No, he admitted. She swallowed. Then stop pretending this was a mistake. He went still. This life destroys people, he said. Anyone close to me pays for it. You didn't destroy me, she replied. You warned me. I stayed. He turned Philly toward her. Why? The question hung between them, raw and dangerous. Because your son needed me, she said first. And you, he asked. She hesitated. Then, honestly, because you needed me too. His breath hitched. I don't need, he said softly. I control. I endure. And you're alone, she said, just as softly. The words cut deeper than any blade. For a long moment, Junseo said nothing. Then he did something Hannah had never seen him do. He sat today. Not as a boss. Not as a commander. As a man. I loved my wife, he said. She was light. She believed I could be better than the world I built. His voice roughened. When she died, I decided love was a liability I could not afford. Hannah's chest ached. And Minijun, she asked. He reminds me every day of what I failed to protect, Junseo said. She reached out without thinking, resting her hand over his. He didn't pull away. You're still protecting him, she said. And you protected me. That's exactly the problem, he replied. I would burn cities for the two of you. The confession stole her breath. Hannah, he said, her name stripped bare of control. If you stay, there is no safe middle ground. She met his gaze, fear and resolve tangling tight in her chest. I didn't ask for safety, she said. I asked for truth. He stood abruptly, pacing once, then stopping in front of her. His hands framed her face, careful, reverent, as if she might break. This will not be easy, he said. There will be danger. There will be blood on my hands that never washes away. She leaned into his touch. I know. Say it again, he demanded quietly. Say you're choosing this. I'm choosing you, Hannah said. Something shattered in his eyes. He pulled her into his arms, not roughly, but fiercely, like a man holding onto the last solid thing in a collapsing world. She pressed her forehead to his chest, feeling his heart race beneath her. I won't let them touch you, he vowed. Ever. She closed her eyes. I'm not asking to be hidden, she whispered. I'm asking to be trusted. He pulled back just enough to look at her. Then he kissed her. It wasn't desperate. It wasn't rushed. It was a promise sealed slow and certain. All the things he'd never allowed himself to want poured into one breathless moment. She kissed him back, steady and sure, grounding him where power never could. When they parted, his forehead rested against hers. You are my home now, he said. Days later, Seoul whispered with rumors. An enemy syndicate dismantled overnight. Leadership vanished. Lines redrawn. Kang Junseo emerged stronger and quieter. Hannah moved into the penthouse not as a possession, but as a presence. She kept her independence. Her bakery job scaled into ownership with his silent backing she never asked for but gratefully accepted. Minijun slept through the night. Laughed more. Called her Hananuna with pride. On quiet evenings, the three of them sat by the windows, watching the river glow under city lights. One night, Minijun looked between them and smiled. Family, he said. Junseo and Hannah exchanged a glance. Yes, family. And it had all begun with a single act of kindness on a cold street. A piece of bread, a crying child, and a choice that changed everything. Thank you for listening to She Fed a Crying Child on the Street, unaware he was the Korean Mafia boss's son. If you enjoyed this story, Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Your support means the world. Until next time, Red Heart Hash.